This is Lauren Steiner with the Robust Opposition here at UCLA. And with me is Elex Michaelson, formerly the political reporter for KNBC 7 and now with Fox 11 here in Los Angeles. How you doing, Alex?
I'm doing well, Lauren. Good to see you. You know, it's a big event when you're here.
When I'm here, right? No, it's a big event when you guys are here. You probably have heard me rail against the mainstream media. I always accept Elex because Elex covers our issues. He covered the TPP rally that I did at an Obama fundraiser. He covered LA for Bernie events. So tell us what informs the things that you decide you want to cover for mainstream media.
Well, I mean, I think you try to get stuff that's relevant to a large group of people. You try to talk about issues that really matter to people right now. And there's so many issues that really matter to people right now, whether it be healthcare, the economy, whether it be foreign policy, whether it be, jobs. I mean, there are so many things that are animating our society on both sides. And I think there's a reason that politics is so hot right now is because people are understanding, I think, in a way that they hadn't maybe before, how important these policymakers are in sort of determining their future.
Elex does a show called The Issue Is. I'm going to give you a plug here for my audience, who probably half of whom have cut the cord like I have. But why don't you tell us about your show, who are some of the guests that you've had on recently, and some of the issues that you've covered on The Issue Is.
Well, first off, we hope to have Senator Sanders. That's part of the reason I'm out here today, to try to make that happen. We've had Gavin Newsom, we've had Al Gore, we've had Senator Sanders in the past, we've had Kamala Harris, we've had a whole variety of candidates and issues that are important to Southern California, national issues, usually issues from a California-centered place. We're going to be launching in San Francisco next week, so we're also going to be on KTVU in San Francisco as well as KTTV here. So if you've cut the cord, you can check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/Elex Michaelson. We also have a podcast. If you search for The Issue Is, you can find it that way. And then we hope you watch the old school way on TV as well.
Okay, now you know that I rib you on Twitter often because I don't feel that you ask the tough questions of these elected officials. And I know it must be hard to have Kamala Harris, a sitting U.S. Senator from California, in your studio and start grilling her about how her record as a prosecutor was really not that progressive and in variance with her actual rhetoric on the campaign trail. Is there a line that you try not to cross between asking an issue-based question and embarrassing your guest? Is that something you need to be cognizant of?
I think it is something you need to be cognizant of not asking about tough issues, but I think there's a way you can ask about an issue that's fair and respectful of a guest, because part of the challenge is getting people to come back or getting people to come on the show. So if you are so rude in your face all over somebody, and then they never come back and nobody ever comes on your show, then what good was that? I mean, I view this as a marathon, not a sprint. And I think part of the reason that we have been able to book a lot of those guests is not because the questions aren't hard, but because we do it in a respectful way. I view it as somebody, if you're welcoming somebody into your home, if you welcome somebody into your home for a dinner party, you wouldn't yell at them the moment that they walked in the door, right? You would treat them with respect. So I don't think anybody says that our questions, well, maybe you do, are super easy, but I also think that there's a way you can do it that's also kind.
I recently had an opportunity to interview Dolores Huerta. She was at the International Women's Day Solidarity Rally, and I said, thank you for your lifetime of work. Why are you here today? And she gave me her sort of pat answer, and then I said, yes, and I'm also curious as to what informed your decision to endorse Kamala Harris, seeing as she didn't have such a great record as a prosecutor. She did not support the reforms of 3 strikes, you're out. She did not support the prosecution of Steve Mnuchin for frauds that he perpetuated when he was head of One West Bank. She did not support Prop 47 or Prop 57. More young men of color were imprisoned because of possession of small amounts of marijuana. So I'm curious as to what informed your decision. So I asked that in a very polite way, and she kind of stumbled and stammered and said she knew Kamala. She was like, she talked to her, she knows her family, she thought it was important for a woman. Did you mention any of those things to Kamala when you had her on the air? And was it because of not knowing these things about her, or again, because you didn't want to put her on the spot and embarrass her, even if you asked it in a nice way?
Look, we get a limited amount of time, and you've got We were given, I think, 7 minutes with her, and it was via satellite, and you do the best you can with that time, and you try to come up with the questions that you think will best inform and best use that time. And I hope that was the start of many interviews. The hope is that she enjoyed that experience and that she'll come back and come into our studio, and then we do have more time. For example, Gavin Newsom, we started with an interview in the field like this, and then he got to know us, and then he came in for one segment, and then we ended up doing a whole show with him. And then that situation, I was able to push on the bullet train, and he actually said what he wanted to do on the bullet train, and everybody acted like they were so surprised when he announced it. Well, he had talked about that on our show. He actually talked about the death penalty and capital punishment on our show months before he came into office. People were saying, well, where did he ever say this? He said it on our show. So because we had taken time to build that relationship, we were able to do something that was much more comprehensive and do a 25-minute, 30-minute interview with him, which not a lot of people don't get to do.
All right, so final question for you. If you get your interview with Bernie Sanders, what are the tough questions you're going to ask Bernie Sanders?
You'll have to watch and find out.
There we go. Reporter never tells his questions in advance. Yeah. Thanks, Elex Michaelson. I'm here with Conan Nolan, and we're waiting for the rally to start. Tell us how long you've been covering politics and the presidential elections here in Los Angeles.
Well, I actually started as a cub reporter. My first campaign was 1976. My first Secret Service press credential, Ronald Reagan running in the California primary for president. So it's been a while.
Now, how do you think coverage of the presidential campaigns have changed over the decades?
Well, it's changed dramatically because of social media. Right now, you're able to do something we weren't able to do just a couple of years ago. And plus, you're able to have candidates who now can converse, communicate to their followers without us. So it's opened up all new avenues for campaign fundraising, communications, dealing with certain issues, so it's radically different. We're no longer the gatekeeper for information.
And that's probably a good thing, because I have a lot of friends in the audience here who feel that the mainstream corporate media, which we always refer to you as, no offense, present company accepted, I always say this because Conan is a great political reporter, sometimes act as, another phrase we use, are stenographers for the corporate state, meaning whatever the elected officials want to say, and because you want to have access to them, you sort of just repeat it without necessarily challenging the accuracy of their statements. Am I being unfair?
Well, I think it would be hard to make that point with this administration in Washington. If you think that the New York Times and the Washington Post are stenographers for Donald Trump, I think you haven't been reading the kind of stories that I've been reading. So I believe there's media is a word that is a derivation of the word mediate. We've sort of lost any kind of mediation, which is why somebody can live stream a mass murder in New Zealand. That wouldn't have happened either. But no, I would reject the notion that we're there just to amplify the comments of a president without holding him.
When I said corporate state, I didn't necessarily mean the president. When I say corporate state, I mean the military-industrial complex backed by Wall Street, such as what is being reported about Venezuela right now, very uncritically, that Maduro is a brutal dictator, that the elections were fraudulent, that the economic crisis is a result of his policies. All those things are demonstrably false. And if you watch the independent media, like Amy Goodman on Democracy Now! Or Abby Martin on the Empire Files, she had Zelaya on, who was the rapporteur from the UN. He came back with a completely different story, and no mainstream media outlet will have him on because it goes against the narrative.
Well, I'm not covering Venezuela, so I can't speak to that. I do find it interesting. The United States is not an outlier in their condemnation of that government. So too do all the neighbors. So too does Colombia. So too does Brazil. So too does Argentina.
You're talking about neoliberal regimes, not the socialist regimes.
No, I got that. But I'm just saying that he has a problem with more than just the United States.
All right, I'm going to leave it go at this, but I think I would like to get back to Conan at some point in the future. I'm sure I'll run into him again at this presidential campaign, but we're going to go right now and cover the rally. Thank you very much.